You are listening to the Fly the W670 podcast. It's season 2, episode 73. Cubs crush Colorado, Crawly. Don't forget to listen, download, review. Most importantly, subscribe to the podcast. Follow us on the socials. Fly the W670 on Twitter, Instagram, and Fly the W on Facebook, or email us at flythew670@gmail.com. All right, Crawly, the regular season portion of the Wrigley Field Cubs is in the books, and they did their job very well, sweeping the Rockies Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
Yeah, I was at the last home game yesterday on Sunday, and it's always a tradition for me to always go to the first home game and the last home game. And it's always one of those weird things because we don't know what's going to happen, if there's going to be any more games at Wrigley or if there's going to be a deep run in October. But it's kind of the chance to say thank you and goodbye to a lot of people that you don't see again until April. It's like a family, and so it's kind of it's kind of like a high school graduation kind of feeling when you go to that last game of the season.
Very cool. Now, you look like you were having fun. I saw a couple pictures on social media, so good time had by all, I guess.
Oh, yeah, good time definitely had by all, but this morning you pay for it, right?
You pay for it indeed. All right, Crawly, let's rewind. Friday was the game that you and I were most nervous about because Jameson Taillon was on the hill.
Yeah, Jameson Taillon versus Noah Davis. They needed a good start from Taillon. Exactly what they got. It wasn't great. There's a lot of traffic on the base paths, but the Rockies couldn't get the big hit. It's good to see another team struggle with that. The Rockies had 2 on in the first, 2 on in the third, 2 on in the fourth, 1 in the fifth, and 1 in the sixth. He only had 1 inning where there were no base runners, but he managed to pitch 6 innings and shut out ball. He struck out 7. He gave up 4 hits, but also 4 walks. Luckily, none of those came back to haunt him. But the most important thing is he didn't give up a home run, Dustin, and that's always kind of the issue.
Yeah, a walk and a home run, right? Doubly bad, but no home runs.
Right, and Drew Smiley came out of the pens. He went 2 innings, gave up no runs on 1 hit, 2 walks, and 2 Ks. And then they gave Hayden Wesniewski a little mop-up duty. He didn't give up a run. He walked 1 and gave up 1 hit. But the Rockies' offense was 0 for 7 with runners in scoring position, Dustin, and they left 10 men on base. And we've talked about that recipe.
Yeah, that's no Gouda, but in this case it worked out.
Yeah, the Cubs offense looked good in the Pittsburgh series. And when you see that the Cubs put on 6 runs, you think the offense was continuing to look good. To be honest, though, Dustin, I wasn't happy with the way the offense performed against a bad pitcher in Noah Davis. Tauchman led off the first with a walk. Nico grounded out, and Tauchman advanced to second. Ian Happ would walk, and then Cody Bellinger was hit by the pitch. Bases loaded, 1 out. Dansby Swanson pops out to second. I'm like, oh, you can't do that. You got to be kidding me. But luckily, with 2 outs, Seiya Suzuki, Cubs' hottest hitter, singled to left. Tauchman scored, but bad send by Willie Harris. Nolan Jones guns down Ian Happ at home. It wasn't even close. Dustin, we saw Nolan Jones in Colorado, just a little over a week ago. I don't know what they were thinking. That guy's got an arm. But bases loaded, 1 out, heart of the order, and they only scored 1 run. That's disappointing.
It was disappointing. I think that's one of the things that all Cub fans are a little worried about as we go into the final week of the regular season.
Right. In the bottom of the 4th, Dansby would draw a leadoff walk. Seiya Suzuki hit a 2-run homer. Cubs are up 3-0. Seiya would then hit a 1-out single in the 6th, and Jared Young, who was called up when Nick Magical went to the IL, he hit a home run. The Cubs were up 5-0. They scored 1 more in the 7th. Mike Tauchman was hit by a pitch, and PCA came on to pinch run. Reliever Brent Suter made a pickoff throw to first. He had PCA leading, but PCA took off on first movement. He stole second for what would be the first of what should be many stolen bases. Happ grounded out. Bellinger would walk, and Dansby would hit a 2-out single, and the Cubs were up 6-0. Nico was 0 for 4, though. Happ 0 for 3 with a walk. Amaya 0 for 4. But luckily, Seiya had the big day, going 3 for 4 with 3 RBIs, and Jared Young was 1 for 3 with a 2-run blast. Dustin, Seiya became the 3rd Japanese-born player to record a season of at least 20 home runs and 70 RBIs. Hideki Matsui and Shohei Ohtani are the other 2. So
yeah,
pretty
cool
good.
There. Yeah, pretty good company to have indeed. And the Jared Young home run, boy, did he make David Ross look smart. Because I was like, why in the world is Jared Young in this game in that lineup? I was playing a little lineup-ista Friday afternoon before first pitch.
Yeah, Jared Young's a guy that when he very similar to Morel, young guy. He's gonna struggle at the plate sometimes, but both those guys, when they hit it, ball goes a long way. So. Just one of those things that Jared Young is kind of, because of the injury to Magical, he's in a spot and see what he can do.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, at the end of that game, during the press conference, David Ross kind of drops a little bombshell in the media room, kind of gets up and he says, oh, by the way, Marcus Stroman starting Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, isn't it fun, Dustin, when we do these podcasts, we write a script, we got all the probables, and then this time of year they change everything.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Makes us look like we don't know what we're doing, Crawly.
So the way it was lined up, and this was from the Cubs, it was supposed to be Tyone, it was supposed to be
Wicks,
and then it was supposed to be Assad on Sunday. And then they decided Stroman's going to get the start. That was his first start since July 31st. Things started out well as Stroh pitched a nice, efficient 1-2-3 inning. He was given a 1-0 lead when Nico single and Ian Happ doubled to score that run, but Stroman ran into trouble in the second. Your buddy Chris Bryant got the standing ovation. Dustin, I was thinking about you. Yeah. Standing over for KB. He led off with a double, advanced to third on a ground out, and scored on Elias Diaz single to tie the game. The next batter, Ezekiel Tovar, singled, and now there's runners at the corners with only one out. Stroman would throw a wild pitch, scoring Diaz and moving Tovar to second. He got the next batter, Hunter Goodman, to fly out, but with two outs, Brenton Doyle, who's a phenomenal fielder but not much of a bat guy. That guy hits well against the Cubs for some reason. He doubles, and the Rockies were up 3-1. Stroman would give up a double and a walk in the third, but the Rockies stranded runners, and Stroman's day was done. So if you look at the line, Stroman went 3 innings pitched, gave up 5 hits, 3 runs, 1 walk, and 2 Ks. It was okay for his first start in a couple.
I guess it was all right, but I liked it better personally. I liked what I saw out of him better coming in late in the game.
Well, that's the thing. Manager David Ross has Javier Assad piggyback, and he was absolutely dominant. He went 4 innings, Dustin, giving up only 2 hits, no runs, no walks, and struck out 6 Rockies. And Dustin, I think when it comes to Stroman, I mean, this is a guy that's been in the league since 2014. He's not a reliever. It's not like, the role that he's most comfortable in, whether he comes in as an opener or rather the back end of the, I just think that it's something that works. And so when you use him in that piggyback situation like they did, I think it worked out because Assad is used to coming in from the bullpen. It doesn't really affect his mindset at all that much.
Right.
And so
I would bet that's what's going to go on with the next time they come through the rotation again. I bet we're going to have the same exact thing.
Right. You're looking to try to get five innings out of Stroman. And if you think about it, when you get into postseason baseball, unless you are a superstar ace, most of the time these guys don't go 3 times around the order. You know what I mean? It's a different animal in the playoffs. Usually they go 5 innings, 2 times around the order, and then you get your stud relievers in. We'll see what if the Cubs get to the playoffs, what the formula is. But I thought that went well with Assad. And with him dealing, the Cubs were able to slowly claw their way back. Miles Mastrobuoni, big day. He singled to lead off the inning, advanced to second on a wild pitch by Flexen, made it to third on a Mike Tauchman line out to right, and scored on a Nico sac fly to make it 3-2 in the 6th inning. Seiya Suzuki led off with a single the next inning, and then Dansby was called out on strikes. Christopher Morel grounds out, moving Seiya to second, and Mr. Clutch, Yan Gomes, doubled to tie the ball game. In the 7th, Rocky reliever Nick Mears walked, the bases loaded. He was pulled by Bud Black. Cody Bellinger hit a sac fly to put the Cubs ahead 4-3, but with runners at second and third and only 1 out, the Cubs couldn't add any additional runs. So that's the second day in a row, Dustin. Bases loaded, 1 or less outs, and you only score 1 run. That's not good.
No, and that's what, before you and I started, these are some of the things that we worry about as we come down that home stretch is the lack of clutch inning. Yan Gomes can't bet every time there's people on base.
Right, and it looked like it would haunt him in the 8th inning when Julian Merriweather comes into the game, and he does his best Mitch Williams impersonation. He gave up a double and 2 walks to load the bases, but struck out 3 batters to leave him stranded. Nearly gave me a damn heart attack.
Yeah, I was following on my phone at that point. For some reason, the app was not working properly, saying I was in an area that I couldn't listen, and I was on the go. So I'm watching it on my phone, trying to follow along, and I'm like, what is going on? It was so weird, but thankfully he got out of it. That was a good comparison to Mitch Williams.
Yeah, Mitch Williams. Yeah, Chris Morel would homer to make it 5-3, and Nico would add 1 more insurance run with an RBI single. The Cubs would win this one 6-3. The offense scored 6 runs on 9 hits, but the Cubs went 2 for 12 with runners in scoring position and left 9 on base.
Now, that will not get it done. That is a number that must improve if there is any hope for October and beyond that. So that takes us to Sunday, Crawly. We were talking about it to start the podcast. The season finale, regular season anyway, at home, Jordan Wicks throwing.
Yeah, tip of the hat to the Cubs organization. A few years back, they screwed up. They stopped the tradition where they had some country singer do the 7th inning stretch on the last day of the season. And I wrote a strongly worded letter. Let's put it that way. But the grounds crew got to sing the 7th inning stretch. It's one of my favorite traditions. And so the grounds crew does such an awesome job keeping Wrigley looking beautiful. And love to see those guys get their moment in the sun. I always think it's good vibes.
Yeah, that was cool. I enjoyed seeing that. Yep.
Cubs going for the sweep. Jordan Wicks had that, pushed back to Sunday, so that's not going to hurt to give him an extra day of rest, And the Cubs get on the board in the bottom of the second. Seiya Suzuki draws a walk and would score on a Yan Gomes double. Cubs are out 1-0. Unfortunately, the Rockies came right back in the top of the third. Austin Wynns lit off with a double, and Bretton Davis bunted him to third for the first out of the innings. Wicks got Ezekiel Tovar to strike out swinging, but Brendan Rodgers, Dustin, he was on our hot list last time. He hit a 2-run homer that landed in the first rows of the left center bleachers. The wind was really blowing from right to left. I was hoping that ball would get knocked down. It wasn't for sure going out, but if the wind wasn't blowing in, Rodgers definitely got all of that one.
Were you sitting in the bleachers on Sunday, Crawly?
No, I was in my seats. I always start and finish in my seats always. Again, talking about the Cubs offense, they had runners on in the first, the third, they had a runner on in the first, 3 on in the second, and 2 on in the third, 1 in the fourth, and 1 on in the fifth, but were only able to score in the second inning on that Gomes double. I was really pissed off, Dustin, in the fifth when Nico Horner, to lead off the inning, gets hit by a pitch. And Ian Happ, your number 3 hitter, for some unknown reason, bunts the ball, goes straight to the pitcher who catches it. Nico's already moving, and he gets thrown out on a double play. I was so mad.
Well, I mean, you and I texted during this moment, and we will try to get this question asked of Ian Happ on the Bernstein and Holmes show tomorrow. But the question, I'm sure that Ian didn't think that was a good idea. So that means Ross called for it. We can argue about that if you want. I'm kind of with you. But it was a poorly executed bunt.
But again, Ian Happ is not a guy that's a bunter.
He's a baseball player, Crawly. He's got to be able to bunt. What if it's the playoffs and you need him to bunt? You got to be able to get a bunt down. Okay.
Every guy has their
professional You're a professional baseball player. Get a bunt down.
Every guy has their weaknesses, and again, against a pitcher like Ty Block, you're going to sit there and have your number 3 hitter bunt. I mean, are you kidding me?
Well, it's definitely something that needs to be talked about. I'm not sure if tomorrow is also a David Ross Tuesday. They have him every other week, and I don't remember if they had him on last week or if it's this week. So if it's this week, maybe we'll get that answer as well.
Well, to make matters worse, in the top of the 6th after that dumb bunt, Nolan Jones, who also Nolan Jones was on our hot list. That kid looks so good. He hit a home run in almost the same place Rodgers did. So now the Cubs are down 3-1. So with the Rockies up 3-1 and Ty Black pitching well, manager Bud Black had to make a decision, either to keep rolling with Block or turn it over to Colorado's bullpen, which hurt him the first 2 games. Mm-hmm. He decides to keep Block in, but you know what? 6 in one hand, half a dozen in the other. This Rockies team is just bad. Seiya led off the inning with a double against Block, and Dansby singled to put runners at the corners with no outs. Yan Gomes would hit a sac fly to make it a 3-2 ball game. And then Patrick Wisdom, the forgotten man, in perhaps his last regular season at bat at Wrigley Field, absolutely annihilated one. The perfect type of home run in these games when the wind's blowing in. Perfect launch angle, 24 degrees. The ball went 432 feet, had an exit velo of 111 miles per hour, and the Cubs retook the lead 4-3.
Was really Wrigley just rocking or what?
Absolutely. And for a guy like me who's gotten to meet Patrick and interview him, and he's one of the greatest guys, it was such a cool moment. And so now the Cubs have the lead. It's time for the Cubs' shaky bullpen to see if they can hold on to it. Daniel Palencia was first off. He has a nice 1-2-3 inning. Jose Cuas took the 8th. He gave a leadoff single to Brenton Doyle, but was wiped out when he was caught stealing. Beautiful throw by Gomes and a nice tag by Nico. Cuas would not allow any more base runners. That takes us to the 9th inning, Dustin. Julian Merriweather on the mound. Another Mitch Williams impersonation here. He's got a 1-run lead. He walks the first 2 batters he faces. Tying run on first, go ahead run, or tying run at second, go ahead run at first. Oh my God, you can't do that. Now, Merriweather gets Eluris Montero to line out and Charlie Blackmon to fly out. So now you got 2 outs. Ryan McMahon comes in to pinch hit. He grounds one to first. Bellinger steps on the bag. The Cubs come to the mound to celebrate. Go Cubs Go starts playing. Clark is running out with a giant W flag. But wait, the umpires meet. They say the ball was foul. The music stops. Clark goes back into his cave. Ryan McMahon's back in the box, and we're stunned, Dustin. I'm freaking out, imagining, okay, the Cubs thought they had the win. You know what I mean? And like, I wonder, like, if Merriweather just kind of relaxes and
changes the mindset, right? You take the foot off the gas a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe like the adrenaline kind of stops. I don't know. But he gets McMahon to strike out, and the Cub fans get to celebrate for a second time. 4-3 was the final. But again, the offense scored 4 runs on 5 hits. They drew 5 walks, 1 for 7 with runners in scoring position. They left 9 men on base. Morel was 0 for 4, Horner 0 for 3, Bellinger 0 for 3, Seiya 2 for 3 with a walk and 2 runs. Yan Gomes 1 for 2 with 2 RBIs.
I'm guessing Seiya Suzuki and Yan Gomes are going to be on the hot list.
You got a good guess there. And Patrick Wisdom was 1 for 2 with a walk and that big home run. Look, Dustin, we talked about it before the show even started here. We said, look, you took care of business. You swept, right? And that's what you have to do in these tight wild card races. We have a totally different show if they go 1-2 in this one, right?
Absolutely. Totally.
But Dustin, looking into it, you have to get this offense back on track. This offense looks very similar to what we saw in April and May, not what we saw June through August, okay? The next 2 opponents, Atlanta and Milwaukee, this isn't the Pirates and the Rockies you're facing, right? The Colorado has one of the worst rotations and one of the worst bullpens, right?
They're terrible on the road.
Yes, and in the first game against the Rockies, the Cubs only scored 3 runs in 5 innings against Noah Davis, a guy that had an ERA over 9 entering the game. In the second game, Chris Flexen, ERA near 8. The Cubs score only 2 runs in 5 innings, going 2 for 12 with runners in scoring position. The Cubs scored 4 runs against Ty Block, but if he would have been pulled in the 5th, he would have had a good day against the Cubs. He would have only given up 1 run. Right. And so, that is a concern. And then the bullpens. I'm terrified no matter who David Ross calls out of the pen right now. Dustin, which reliever would you say right now you have the most confidence in if that phone's ringing?
Ooh, that is a tricky question because it's not Palencia, it's not Merriweather, it's not Quas. I mean, right now, maybe Leiter Jr., maybe. Do I get to count Javier Assad as a reliever right now?
I would say we're talking 1 run. I don't know. And again, you are going to be the next team you're facing. When we talk about hot and not for Atlanta, that you can't make mistakes. You go ahead and try walking the first 2 runners in the 9th and see how that goes against Atlanta. Good luck.
Who's your guy? Who's your? I
don't have one, Dustin. I'm terrified.
And I know we're going to get to it later on, but let's just get to it right now. Brad Boxberger's gone again.
Yep. Right. That's another option. So,
well, I'm saying he's not an option because he's gone again. He's back on another option. Right. So, it's slim pickings right this second. There is no doubt about that. You are listening to the Fly the W670 podcast. It's season 2. It's episode 73. Cubs crush Colorado. Don't forget to listen, download, review, and subscribe to the Fly the W podcast. In this segment, Crawly interviews legendary actor, Chicago native, lifelong Cubs fan, Joe Mantegna, and host of the Hollywood and Ivy show on Marquee, Brigham Avery, about Joe's Cubs fandom and why he and Brigham decided to celebrate the Hollywood and Ivy show.
Joining me now on the Fly the W podcast, I'm pleased to welcome the executive producer of the Hollywood and Ivy show. You've seen him on, all sorts of TV shows, movie shows, huge Cub fan, Joe Mantegna. And we have the host of Hollywood and Ivy, Brigham Avery. How you doing, guys?
Excellent. Buddy, outstanding, Crawly. Thanks for having us. Great to be here.
Absolutely. Joe, everybody knows you are one of the biggest Cub fans around, and you've always kind of, since your early days in acting here in Chicago, kind of put your Cubs passion kind of matching with your acting when you did the Bleacher Bums in, was it 1977?
Correct.
What gave you the idea to come up with a play about fans of the bleachers?
Well, I've been acting professionally since '69 at that point. And in fact, in '69, when I was doing the play Hair at the Schubert Theater downtown Chicago, in the second act, I wore a tie-dyed Ernie Banks T-shirt because the Hair was that kind of a show that you could kind of free-form it. And I wore this tie-dyed Ernie Banks T-shirt. And I remember when Ernie Banks came to see a performance of it, and they let me know that, the press people let me know at intermission that he was in the audience. At the curtain call, I walked to the front of the stage and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, I just want to, just before we do the curtain call, I just want to say we have a celebrity in the audience, Mr. Ernie Banks." Like, I remember this was '69. The Cubs were in first place. It was the year of they almost got there, before the Miracle Mets. So anyway, he stood up and and then he invited me to the ballpark the next day. So, my relationship in terms of show business and the Cubs was already well cemented at that point. But in '77, when I was with the Organic Theater Company out of Chicago, we were getting to near the end of our season. We had no money left for another season. We were going to have to take the summer off and wait for our grant money to come in to start in the fall again. And they said, and I remember Stuart Gordon, our producing director, said, "Has anybody got an idea for a show that will cost us nothing?" And basically, I put my hand up and I said, "I've got an idea." I sit up in the bleachers, whenever I can, and I sit amongst this group of guys. And I said, "There's as much theater going on up in those bleachers as what's happening on the ball field, and as much theater as any playwright has ever written." I said, "I think if you all come with me and sit with me in that section of the bleachers, you'll agree that there's a play there." And my impetus was, if we can get 1/100th of an audience to see the play as the Chicago Cubs get to come see a team that at that point was, hadn't won a championship in almost a century, then I'm onto something. So in other words, I took the whole cast down and the whole company of actors. We went to 3 straight games, I think, just to kind of absorb it all. And they all agreed, said, "Yeah, this is theater. There's a story here." The crux of it being, what causes fans to embrace a team that at the best is mediocre, but yet have this incredible passion, people from all walks of life, financial, racial, nationality, doesn't matter, and that was the crux of the play. And that's why I had the idea. I thought, if I can just tap into that, what's fandom about? And the Cubs being the perfect example of, if you're, it's hard to be a Cub fan, easy to be a Yankee fan back in those days, But so what makes a fan a fan? So that's what that's about.
And what made you a Cubs fan? How did you end up in this crazy group of people?
That's the curse my father put on me, I guess you'd have to say. You know what I mean? I'd always said, it would have been a lot easier if my dad may have been a Sox fan back then. At least they gave us a little satisfaction in the 50s, But no, it's one of those things. I think my grandfather started it and then gave it on to my dad, and my dad gave it on to me. So I can't point to that moment where it happened. All I know is we always went to Wrigley Field. I never went to Comiskey Park. Maybe it was just that it was closer. We lived on the west side. I could have gone either way, because being on the west side, it could have gone either way. And my next door neighbor, my best friend, Ernie Majerus, was a Sox fan. So, it was the luck of the draw. As to what caused my dad, I never got to really question him about that. But I'm so glad he did. Because like I said, I think being a Cubs fan, it builds character. I would like to think it builds character in any individual that's taken upon themselves to follow a team like that.
Absolutely. And, when you kind of look at that, you have been to so many games. Tom Dreesen was just out here singing the stretch.
Right.
Now, I know you and him are in a competition to see who has thrown out the most first pitches.
Yeah,
is Ed Hardig on that? Do you know?
I don't know. I know Tom's probably up on me, though. In fact, he texted me the photo that day, a few days ago. And I last did it just over Memorial Day weekend when I was there. There may be others, actually, that have done it even more than Tom. And I don't know, but that's a little competition he and I have. But he was a bat boy for a minute. So, he's kind of up on me in that department. But yet, I conceive the play that's still being done all over the world at different times. So I'd like to think I did my bit of kind of spreading Cub lore, regardless of who thrown out the first pitch.
Now, you do have bragging rights because you went to one of the greatest games of all time, which was...
Well, not just there. I threw out that first pitch, and I'm going to spin the camera. You see those baseballs? See those baseballs up there?
Yes, sir.
Okay. One of those baseballs is signed by Kerry Wood and dated. And that's the baseball that I threw out the first pitch in the game that he struck out 20 players. So that was the luck of the draw. I mean, I happened to be in Chicago at that time to record the radio version of Bleacher Bums. We've been asked, I think it was by PBS or whoever it was, to bring in the original cast and make the radio version of it. And because then we wound up filming it as well for WTTW. And so when I happened to be in town, the Cubs contacted me, says, hey, we heard you're in town. You want to throw out the first pitch this week? I said, yeah, Thursday I'm free, and it was like a gloomy kind of semi-rainy day against Houston. I figured, it'll be fun. Invite the cast, invite my brother, have a few laughs, see the Cubs. Little did we know it would be one of the most, history-making days in baseball ever, especially for Cub fans. So I feel very blessed that I was able to, not only throw out that first pitch, I called the 7th and 8th inning up in the booth with Santo, and I have that ball. That's the first. That's a Hall of Fame ball. That could be, but it's staying here.
Absolutely. Were you nervous at all going into the 8th or 9th? I can't imagine what the vibe was like.
Well, you could find it online. I'm sure the play-by-play, because they sent CDs out of that entire game the following season to all the season ticket holders, and you hear me calling the radio, up in the booth. I stayed, I think, through the 8th inning. And so you hear me going, oh, no, he's got 18. Oh, no, he's got 19. What I mean? It was like we were all hyped up. All of us were just totally jacked up, not even sure what was going to happen. And it's probably best that it was a surprise, best that it was unexpected.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? It made it all the more special.
I knew you were coming on, so I grabbed this out of my memorabilia collection. This is actually one of the Ks from that day.
Excellent.
Yeah.
It was actually my PE teacher, my middle school PE teacher, that was the one that made these. He made 16 of them because he didn't anticipate 20. And his family was nice enough to, I made a donation, and they were not kind enough to give me one of the 16. So I had to show you that because I knew there was only one person that could appreciate it.
Oh, absolutely.
There's two people that can appreciate that, actually. That's amazing. I love that. And gentlemen, I want to say, first of all, don't you think that is the most dominant pitching performance of all time? I know you're asking the questions here, buddy, but Jason, Joe, that was his 5th ever start. I'm talking about.
Oh yeah, and and not just that.
Roger Clemens struck out 20, you guys, in his 3rd full year in baseball. It was against the Seattle Mariners, who are not murderers row.
Yeah, and he probably was juiced.
Run in that game. And Kerry Wood did that against the Houston Astros, who had 2 future Hall of Famers.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what, sometimes that weather, Joe and Jason, it can be very difficult to pitch in that overcast.
Of course,
I can still see those Ks with all the rain.
But also, I remember distinctly that sometime, it must have been around the 5th, 6th inning. I don't remember. But there was an incident that I looked back on it and I went, there was like a drop third strike. In other words, there was an incident where he kind of grazed the ball, and it just kind of tipped out of the catcher's mitt, and didn't even think twice about it at the time. But I thought to myself, wow, it was just that 1 millisecond, that kept it from being the 21st strikeout. So.
And it could have been a no-hitter too. That could have been, there was a ball hit by Ricky Gutierrez that went off the glove of Kevin Orey, who was the 3rd baseman. That could have easily, if it was a hometown enough scoring, that could have easily been scored an error, and it would have been a no-hitter, a 20 strikeout no-hitter, but a 20 strikeout 1-hit performance. He did hit a batter. He walked nobody. And for that to be your 5th overall start in baseball, I don't know how that can't be the greatest pitching performance of all time. And as a matter of fact, we've got something we're going to announce, Joe. We got a big show coming up in a week with somebody that might have been, critical that day. Not just you, but,
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right.
Now, Joe, I know that not only have you appeared in a lot of Cubs documentaries, everybody loves talking to you about your fandom, but you've also produced some stuff. Were you one of the producers for This Old Cub, Jeff Santos documentary on his father?
Yeah, I was. I mean, Ron, I became dear friends with Ron's son, Jeff, who's a wonderful writer. Came to me, years before that with the script called A Diamond in the Rough, which was basically a play he had written that was wonderful. It was loosely based on his dad and Randy Hundley and Glenn Beckert, I believe. Or no, it was the characters he based it on. It was, I know his dad was certainly one of them, and I think Hundley was the other one. And then Beckert was the other one. And then the other one was what's his name?
Not Kessinger, Randy Hundley.
No, Joe, the guy that used to use the hairdryer in the dugout, in the clubhouse, the first
Joe
baseman.
Pepitone
was and so it was loosely based on Pepitone, Santo, and Becker, and yet of course the names were all changed, but it was a wonderful play that he had written, and so I got involved with him with that, and we did a reading of it. We did a wonderful reading of it with Dennis Franz. Did it with myself, and we wound up recording it. In fact, for some sort of radio theater group. And I'm forgetting what the original question was. We were talking about.
You were producing that. You were producing.
Oh, producing it. Yeah. So this old Cub. Yeah. So when he asked me to, become the narrator basically of the film, and I also helped get him some of the celebrities that appears in it, like Dennis Farina, Gary Sinise, a few of the others. So in other words, but Jeff, it was pretty much, I give all the credit to Jeff. Jeff is a wonderful talent. He put that all together, and I was just happy to get involved with him to help him get it to the next level.
Absolutely. And now you're producing the show on Marquee, one of my favorites, Hollywood and Ivy. And talk to me about how you and Briggs kind of came up with this idea to put this on Marquee.
Well, Brig is like a computer with the Cubs. So, I mean, I tap into him like, just like if I want any information on it, going back to Tinkers, to Evers, and before that, But anyway, we have a history together. When we used to have the restaurant Taste Chicago in Burbank years ago, Brig would come in there, do some live stuff, from there. So, I mean, it was just a meeting of two Cub fans. Both of us have different, kind of occupations in the business. And Brig came to me with this idea, and I just thought, yeah, Hollywood and Ivy. I like the name of that, and let's give it, like anything else. You give it a shot, you throw it up in the air, see if it flies. You know what I mean? But I mean, what was great is, it's pretty much my job to approach a lot of these celebrities that you see on the show. And what's wonderful is, and I'm not surprised that it happened. You ask them to do anything else. You might get, well, I don't know, talk to my agent, or I don't know, I'm going to be here or that, or there'll be a whole lot of rigmarole. You start mentioning, hey, you want to come on a show and talk about your fandom of the Cubs? All of a sudden, these men and women turn into little kids again. They're like, oh yeah, that would be fun. You know what I mean? And so no matter who they are, I recall how when I used to be on the Kennedy Center committee, and one year they honored Bruce Springsteen. I'm riding the bus from the White House to the Kennedy Center to go to the event, and I'm with Eddie Vedder. And all we talked about was the Cubs. You know what I mean? And I'm thinking, here I am sitting next to this rock and roll god, and here I am, an actor, him the rock star, and yet that one thing we shared, our love of the Cubs, and that was like we were both getting excited, like we were both 12 years old, talking about baseball cards and stuff like that. So I mean, that to me, that's the key, and that's to me, that's the success of the show, and you don't. Why wouldn't you want to watch a show like that if you're especially a Cub fan or even a baseball fan?
And then that's what you're talking. So for me, that's what I love, is kind of like combining my worlds. Like Eddie Vedder is one of my favorite musicians, and he loves the same baseball team I do. I love so many movies that you've been in. Gary Sinise has been in. Briggs had on, and the last time we talked, he had Billy Corgan on.
Billy Corgan, great, who was so wonderful. And runs the game. We got Bonnie Hunt, we have Mary Lou Henner. We've got some of the women coming in now. We've got, and in terms of ages, Nick Offerman, we've got him interested. He wants to. I've been exchanging calls with him. He'll be doing. I know Vince Vaughn wants to do it. Bill Hader wants to do it. Bob Newhart wants to do it. He's just been in some, guarded help lately. But he's willing. Willing. Not quite able yet, but wants to do it. But so anyway, like I say, when you tap into that, regardless of your age, they tap into something that goes very deep in their senses.
You guys have a good crew. When the Dodgers come out there, I've seen you guys out in some of those boxes before. That has got to be a lot of fun to be a fly on the wall in that skybox.
Oh yeah. I never even know who's going to show up. When we had the restaurant, we used to cater it. So my wife would bring stuff from Tasty. We'd have the deep dish pizza, your Italian beef, your combos, Chicago dogs. It was as close you're going to be to Wrigley Field and still be in Los Angeles. So So yeah, that was always great. You never knew who was going to be there. I remember I walked in once. Jack Black was there from the White Stripes. Was up in the box.
Jamie
Vince
Foxx was there,
Vaughn
wasn't he?
was
Joe?
there.
Jamie Foxx stopped by.
Jamie Foxx, yes, and
Yeah.
Hughes stopped by. Kerry Wood
Yeah.
was there one time. I mean,
Yeah.
you just never knew who was going to be stopping by, and it was always so wonderful. So I mean, I thank Dodger ownership for allowing us, and for Cubs ownership for kind of arranging for all that to happen.
Very nice. Now, Briggs, talk to me. Who is coming up next at Hollywood and Ivy? Because you guys always, like I said, you have guests that I get excited. So when you tell me, Crawly, we got someone coming on, that's why I got to get you on here to kind of tell me what's happening.
Yeah, so I wanted to add something initially just about a few things Joe said beautifully, Joe. I believe that Bleacher Bums, I didn't want to lose this thought. I think Bleacher Bums was the foundation laying essence of the Bears and all the other Chicago stuff. You know, that was the first one. I think that lit the fuse for Lorne Michaels, George Wendt, and everybody over there. I also wanted to mention that when Joe and I did his show live from Taste Chicago in August of 2016, Crawly, it was August 28th. We had a show there, and Joe and I made a proclamation. Joe came on as some guy named Fat Tony from some place named Springfield, where some people named Homer and Marge happen to live that maybe you've heard over the past 30 plus years. But he came on as Fat Tony and made a proclamation. And we kind of take credit for everything that happened in 2016, forming that day. And in that moment, when I was talking to Joe, I knew that Hollywood and Ivy could be a show because I realized the passion, the pain of Cub fans, and the ultimate reward, the beautiful reward that came in 2016. So much shared in that. That's the moment we knew. And we kind of take credit for them winning it in 2016, don't we, Joe? A lot of it worked.
I'd like to, but I'm sure there's a lot of others out there feel the same way. But we'll put our 2 cents in and say we did our little bit.
It was like Mitchapalooza at the beginning of old school. Remember the first party in Mitchapalooza? Everyone just stuck around and hung around the frat house, and that's right. Kind of what the show has become. But the show, Crawly, we got coming up with Joe's going to be appearing live on Zoom as he is now. It's a week from today in Wrigleyville. It's with Kerry Wood and Joe Girardi. So we got two integral Cubs, really linked to two great Cubs teams. The '89 Cubs, Joe Girardi's rookie year, that was a big part of his career, his first year. And then the '98 Cubs we talked about with Kerry Wood. So two playoff teams, two great players. Joe Girardi went and won a World Series. So it's talking about the essence of being Cubs at that time and the reality of the relationship with Joe. Joe has a relationship with Joe Girardi as well. So we have those two guys. And then we've got, nobody says no. They're all excited. It's just how do we schedule everybody? How do we juggle all the people that want to come on? So when we come back, we can finalize and talk about, the others. But right now on the 27th, we got those two coming up, Kerry Wood and Joe Girardi here in Wrigleyville. So one day. And Joe, tell him about the first time you met Joe Girardi. That's a hell of a story.
Oh yeah, that's a pretty kind of because again, if he was with was it '89? It was his first year with the Cubs.
Yeah.
So it would have been that season. So I was throwing out the first pitch one of those games in '89, and of course, what they do is they often have the second string, third string catcher catch the ball for the first pitch. So like they hand me the ball, and then this guy runs out to catch the ball. I know it's not the starting catcher because that guy's warming up, getting ready. So I throw the pitch. So the catcher runs up to me, goes, "Hey, well done. You want me here? Let me sign the ball for you." And I'm thinking, "Oh God, this guy's going to be in Iowa next week, and he's going to sign the ball." I was going to kind of save it, maybe get one of the guys, one of the regulars to sign it. One of the guys that are going to run up to the mound or something. And I said, "Yeah, sure, okay, yeah, thank you." He signs it, and I stick it in my pocket. And I'm thinking maybe I'll give it to a kid on the way out or something, you know what I mean? But whatever. I held on to the ball. I took it out. I put it in my case up here. I think it was later. Might have been years later. I'm going through my baseballs and I realized, oh my God, that was Girardi that signed the ball. And I'm thinking, so it just goes to don't take for granted who's maybe catching your first pitch because that guy may wind up in the Hall of Fame someday. So anyway, that's something I look forward to sharing with him. If he doesn't know that already, that I almost did him a bad thing on my part, but thank God I held on to it, and so I'm very proud of it.
Now, Joe, I got to ask you, I know I appreciate you for your time. You're watching the Cubs. You have this crazy wild card chase going on. How close do you get to the follow the games? And what's your feeling right now, the temperature on the Cubs, if they make the postseason or not?
See, at my age, I've learned over the years, I don't. I wait. I'll wait. What is it? September 20th. See me in about 5 days, and then I'll tell you how my feelings are. Because I've learned. I learned back in '69. Even it's like don't be getting yourself too riled up. This early in the game. I mean, let's just see how it plays out. I even did that in 2016. I mean, I wasn't even right up until Rizzo caught that ball for that final out. I still withheld a little bit of myself in check because I thought to myself, they don't want to find you here in a puddle of like, oh yeah, he died because of what happened with the Cubs today. No, so I'm going to hold that in reserve. My potential excitement. We'll take it a day at a time.
Well, I appreciate your time, Joe and Briggs, both you guys, for coming out.
Thanks, Crawly. You're the man is right. Thank you.
Thank you.
I had a great time. Thanks, pal.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
This is segment 3 of the Fly the W670 podcast. It's season 2. It's episode 73. We're calling this one the Cubs Crush Colorado. Crawly, let's take a look at the standings now that we're in the middle of a day off. 6 regular season games left, and they're big ones.
Yeah, my heart needed this day off right here. If you take a look, Milwaukee has all but clinched it. I was hoping they would do us solid and beat Miami, but they lost that series. The Milwaukee's 88-68. They're 1 game away from clinching it all. The Cubs are 82-74. They're 6 games back from Milwaukee. Cincinnati 8.5 back, and Pittsburgh 14 games back, and St. Louis in last place. What a shame. Looking at the wild card though, and this is where the action is, Dustin. Right now, this is a little bit off because Arizona lost to the Yankees today. So
yes, thank goodness that happened. Finally. I mean, the D-backs are about to go in there and sweep them.
Right. Philadelphia is 87-69. They're 8-2 in their last 10. They have a 5-game winning streak. They are hot. So that first wild card spot looks like that's pretty much a done deal. But now after that, it's all up in the air, and there's a lot of craziness going on. So Arizona and the Cubs are tied at 82-74. But again, Arizona holds the tiebreaker. Miami 1 game back after they did lose 1 against the Brewers. So they are still they are 1 game behind the Cubs, 81-75. Cincinnati lost a heartbreaking game where they had a 9-1 lead, Dustin, against the Pirates. So the Reds are 80-77. They're 2.5 games back. And then San Diego, we haven't been talking about them. Probably too little, too late. They're 9-1 in their last 10. They're 5 games back, and San Francisco is 5 games back. So those teams basically need to win out and have everyone else lose out. So they're pretty much done.
They're pretty much done. So it looks like what? It's a 3-team race. Two teams get in, basically. That's what we're thinking right now. Is that
yes, sir?
Right. Yeah. So it's the Reds, the Marlinas, and the Cubs,
and Arizona. It's all right there.
Right. So it's 4 teams. So it's really 4 teams for 4 teams, 2 spots, because Philly's definitely getting in no matter what.
Right. And so if it were to end today, the Phillies would take on Arizona and the Cubs would take on the Brewers in the first round. Dustin, do you like how that lines up?
I like that better. I like that better than having to play the Phillies. I really do. I like the drama. I like the proximity. I like the trash talk. I like it so much more. And I think the Cubs would have a better chance against the Brewers than they would against the Phillies. So that's what's going to be interesting about these final 3 games, because at the time of this recording, the Brewers have still yet to clinch the National League Central, right? Their magic number is down to 1, I believe. So any combination of Cubs losses or Brewers win, and the Brewers win for the second time in 3 years. But the soonest that's going to happen is Tuesday, which means Wednesday they'll be partying. So you'll get like an opener. And then Thursday you might be partying still. And you might get, so who knows how they're going to handle that exactly. And maybe they want the Cubs. Maybe they want the Cubs. Maybe they feel, puffy chested. Maybe they say, yeah, you know what? We don't want to play the Diamondbacks. We want to play the Cubs.
Well, I'll tell you this, Dustin. I looked in my At Bat app today, and look what I have. For those of you subscribed to the 670 The Score YouTube channel, my postseason tickets are on my app. So I'm hoping to use those. That's for sure.
Yeah, well, it's going to take a win in that wild card round, right? You're going to have to get to the NLDS to use those things.
Yep, absolutely. So I just got my fingers crossed right now. But speaking about playoff runs, how about the Tennessee Smokies?
Yeah, your team. Yeah, one of your teams.
They are one win away from their first championship since 1978 after they beat the Pensacola Wahoos 8-4 in the first game of the Southern League Championship Series at Smoky Stadium. They had free beer night again. Brandon Birdsell, the Cubs' fifth-round draft pick in 2022, he pitched really well and only gave up one run and had plenty of support from the offense. It scored 8 runs in the first 3 innings. The game was pretty much over after the third. BJ Murray drove in 2 runs, and 7 out of the 9 batters in the lineup had at least 1 RBI. The series now moves to Pensacola. Game 2 will be played on Tuesday night with Cubs' #1 draft pick from 2022, Cade Horton, getting the ball, and if necessary, Game 3 on Wednesday night in Pensacola. I will have 2 TVs going so I can listen to Mick and the boys and still be paying attention to the Cubs in Hotlanta.
All right, very good. Keep us informed on how that one plays out. How about the attendance, Crawly? You're part of this number.
Yes, sir. The attendance went up this year. 2,775,149 fans passed through the gates of the friendly confines. That number's up from 2022 when the Cubs drew 2,616,780, but still not at the heydays of that 3 million number mark, which is what the Cubs want to see.
Yeah, that's what they want to see. They're going to have to spend a little more, win a little more, I think, to get to that point. How about David Ross doing a little backpedaling, eating a little crow, having a text Derek Shelton, but maybe it worked because they were saying that maybe they got motivated to take out the Reds, and they had some interesting happenings in their ball games.
Yeah, they took 1 of 3 from the Reds, so maybe David Ross wasn't all that wrong. Remember that after the game, Ross said, they're not a good team that just took 2 or 3 of us, not our caliber team, I believe, and we got to turn it around. Well, Derek Shelton's not happy. The next day he says, it's unfortunate that he chose to make them about our team instead of his team, about the comments. And Brian Reynolds says, we could use it for motivation. If we're such a bad team, maybe he should have managed his team a little better and beat us. Ooh, boy. Ross, like you said, texted Shelton and apologized. He kind of said a whole bunch of mumbly excuses as everything. And, he said, you're not always perfect in the post games and things come out wrong, whatever. But he was right. It was just a moment of truth. You know what I mean? That he let it slip what was really on his mind. He just didn't say the way you're supposed to say.
Yeah, and even when he said it initially, he tried to walk it back. He knew immediately that he went a little too far.
Right. That was his temper that came through on that one.
Yep.
So some scary news here. Peter Gammons is reporting there are talks that Craig Breslow, the Cubs vice president of pitching, could be moving to the Red Sox as Boston begins their restructuring. Breslow makes his home out in the Boston area. His wife and kids are out there. It would be a lateral move, so the Cubs have every right to block it. But this is something to definitely keep an eye on. Breslow is highly respected in MLB, and the Cubs pitching infrastructure has improved greatly under his watch. You just hate to lose guys like that.
Yeah, he's been instrumental. There's no doubt about that. I'm sure him and Tommy Hotovy work really well together.
Right. And you've seen the amount of arms being developed, even when you look at this year and you see Luke Little and you see what Javier Assad's done, and you've seen what Jordan Wicks has done. That's a big change from the last great Cubs team of the 2015 to 2020 era. So we'll see what happens. I just wanted to point out on Sunday too, levee workers began to strike. There was longer lines than usual, and the Cubs were definitely short-staffed. It was definitely noticeable at the game.
All right, well, I guess that's too bad. They're making a lot of money. I have no idea what they pay these people, but obviously they're trying to prove a point. A couple minutes ago, Crawly, we talked about the relievers and who you would trust, and I said Brad Boxberger no longer an option.
Yep, he's on the 15-day IL with the right forearm strain, the same injury that Adbert Alzolay has and Michael Fulmer has. And so Brad Boxberger has just had an injury-plagued 23 season. It looks like it's all over. Keegan Thompson was recalled from AAA Iowa, but we didn't see him at all this weekend. Heimer Candelario is going through full baseball activities, and it looks like he'll be activated for Tuesday night's game against Atlanta. Barring any setback, you never know what happens. Remember, we thought that Stroman was going to come back, and then all of a sudden he was back. He was further delayed. But they showed him on Saturday on Marquee, outside and this and that. And Joe Girardi was talking about how that's a good sign that after a baseball workout that he's not in the trainer and that he's outside kind of talking and throwing the ball around a little bit. So looks like we could see him, like I said, as early as Tuesday night's game. Adbert Alzolai's thrown a couple of bullpen sessions, and the hope is he will be back for the last series of the season against Milwaukee. David Ross said Nick Madrigal will not return for the regular season, but did not rule him out if the Cubs do make the postseason. Nick Birdie and Brandon Hughes have been rehabbing in Iowa. They've been throwing in Iowa, but Iowa's season ended on Sunday, so we'll see what happens next.
I mean, these two guys, Crawly, have been like rehabbing all year, it seems like. Right?
Yeah, Brandon's was a reoccurring injury with that knee, so he's been up and down all year with that knee.
Right. And then we had like one Nick Birdie sighting, right? At one point.
Yeah, he had the appendicitis, and if they don't think those guys are, if they're struggling in Iowa, they're not going to bring them up to Chicago. If they can't be consistent in Iowa, that's not going to happen.
All right, Cubs Braves starts tomorrow night, Tuesday, down in Atlanta.
Yes, the big bad Braves, best record in baseball at 156. First place in the NL East. The Cubs have faced Atlanta once this season at Wrigley Field in early August, and they took the series, Dustin. They got beaten really bad, 8-0 in game one as Max Fried came off the IL and dominated the Cubs, while Kyle Hendricks gave up 7 runs in the first inning. Kyle has an awful career record against Atlanta. We talked about it. And so when they do this lineup manipulation, they purposely moved him to Milwaukee so he would not be facing the Braves. So that also has to do with that Jordan Wicks and Stroman start as they were looking not only at Wicks being able to throw against Colorado, who doesn't do good against lefties, but also to kind of make sure that that you have you don't have Hendricks going up against Atlanta. In game 2, Javier started against Bryce Elder. The Cubs scored 5 runs off Elder in the first inning, with Swanson and Candelario hitting solo home runs. The Cubs took the finale 6-4 with Justin Steele taking on Charlie Morton. Steele went 5.1 innings and gave up 4 runs. Only 3 of them are earned. But the Cubs scored 2 in the third and 3 in the fifth. Ian Happ and Dansby Swanson both had 2 RBIs in the win. So they took the series, but Atlanta, again, a very good team. They're coming back from Washington where they took 3 of 4 from the National. Some good news and bad news about this series. The bad news is Atlanta has a 48-27 record at home. The Braves are also still playing for home field advantage throughout the playoffs, and the Dodgers are only 4 behind them, so they'll probably be playing most of their starters. They've already clinched, but they still want that home field for all the postseason as far as the NL side of it. But the good news for the Cubs is that Spencer Strider, the Braves Cy Young candidate, just pitched Sunday, so the Cubs will miss him. Their other top 2 starters, Max Fried and Charlie Morton, are both on the IL. They say that Fried will be back for the postseason. Charlie Morton is doubtful. So the Cubs are not having to face any of the 3 studs that Atlanta features.
Well, there's nothing wrong about that. That's for sure.
That's a break. I'll tell you that much. Now, when we get into the probables for this series, game 1 is at 6:20. They got Justin Steele at 16-5 versus Bryce Elder, 12-4 with a 3.63 ERA. We've talked about Justin Steele. He has looked tired his last few times out, and he has been, after chasing that Cy Young all season long, he has really, really struggled as of late. He gave up 6 runs in his last start, against Pittsburgh, and then he gave up 6 runs in his start before that against Arizona. So the last time he's really pitched well was against Arizona on 9-9. He went 7 innings, gave up 6 hits, but only 1 earned run. So you're really looking for him to bounce back.
Yeah, absolutely. Bounce back would be a nice spot there. This is going to be a really gut-wrenching couple of nights. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, he's up against Bryce Elder, who's 12-4 with a 3.63 ERA. The Cubs faced Bryce Elder once this season, and he took the loss, going 4.1 and giving up 7 runs. 5 of them are earned. And against his last start against Philly, he gave up 4 earned runs. Against Miami, the start before that, 4 earned runs. And against Pittsburgh, he had his best start 3 starts ago. He gave up only 2 earned runs. So he struggled the last time out, but those were against potential postseason teams in Philadelphia and Miami. So the Cubs are in that same conversation. they should be able to take care of business. When you see Elder, he's mainly a fastball slider guy. He induces a lot of ground balls, so they're going to have to keep that ball elevated.
Yes, they will.
Game 2, you see Jameson Taillon, 8-10 with a 5.05 ERA versus the legendary TBD. As we talked about, they have a lot of injury issues right now. We don't know if they're going to go with a bullpen game or somebody that they just called up from AAA. We don't have it there. Jameson Taillon is 8-10 with a 5.05 ERA. Good start against Colorado. Again, a lot of traffic, but 6 innings. But he gave up 0 earned runs, but 4 hits and 4 walks. That's unusual for him to walk that many batters. Against Colorado, he went 5 innings, gave up 7 hits, 3 earned runs. And against Arizona, he went 6 innings pitched. He got 0 earned runs. Now, Dustin, here's what has me nervous about Taillon, is that Taillon has been doing really, really well at home and really, really bad on the road. He has a 1.56 ERA, 6 earned runs over 34 innings at home since July 23rd. The problem that you've been seeing with Taillon is every one of his starts on the road in that same time frame have not been good. So if you take a look at, especially in September, against Colorado, that was on the road, he gave up 3 earned runs. Against Cincinnati on the road, he gave up 5 earned runs. Against Detroit on the road, he gave up 4 earned runs. And against Toronto on the road, he gave up 8 earned runs. So all of those are his last road starts. So he's got to be able to figure it out.
Yeah, those are good statistics to share with the class, if you will, the home and road split. So, boy, it's got to be better. And I wouldn't think that Taillon would get the ball on the road in Milwaukee or in Philadelphia. That's for sure.
We'll see what happens. But you got the game 3, Marcus Stroman also going up against TBD, 10-8 with the 3.88 ERA. Again, we've talked about Marcus coming back from injuries, his struggles against Colorado, 3 innings, 3 earned runs. That was his first start since July 31st. So, he has, prior to the injury, when you had the hip issues, he was struggling. He has completed fewer than 3.2 innings in his last 4 starts, 20 earned runs in 16 innings pitched. So hoping that, that was, kind of the first game back. And I think that Tommy Hotovy had a good conversation with him when he struggled in the second and was able to look a lot better after that. But it's just going to be a little bit of rust. And he was talking about after the game, he wasn't in his routine yet that a starter normally goes through. So hoping that this time around it works out a little bit better.
Yeah, have to hope, that's for sure. But he's a big game guy. He's going to want to do the best he can. So I appreciate the fact that he's back, and I appreciate the fact that he was able to pitch and willing to pitch out of the bullpen, and then make a start without his normal setup. So we'll as you said, we're gonna have to wait and see what happens. That's why they play the games, Crawly. And talking about playing the games, Seiya Suzuki's been playing really well. He's at the top of the hot list. I can't believe who also is on the hot list.
You're going to love it, aren't you?
No, I'm not.
Seiya Suzuki, 10 for 23. He's got 2 home runs, 5 RBIs, slashing 435, 500, and 783. But Dustin, right behind him, actually a little bit better batting lately, just not as Miles Mastrobuoni. He is 8 for his last 17. He's not a big home run RBI guy, but he gets on base. He sets the table. He is slashing, Dustin, 471, 500, and 588. So he is
unbelievable.
Doing really good.
The tip of the cap. He's doing much better than I could have thought.
Yes. Unfortunately, the knot has you again a little bit nervous to see Cody Bellinger back on there.
Yeah, he looked not right this weekend.
Yeah, 4 for his last 21, 1 home run, 4 RBIs.
Too many strikeouts.
He only had 3 strikeouts and 4 walks.
Well, I guess they came at big moments then. Those strikeouts, at least there's runners on base. I noticed that they were looking instead of swinging. I hate looking at strikeouts. It looks like the pitch is good from my seat on my couch. You should be able to see that it's good standing right there at home plate. Also, Christopher Morel on your list.
Yeah, he's 2 for his last 19. But he does have that pop, 2 home runs, 2 RBIs, but he's slashing 105, 227, 421. So
it's all about when you get the 2 hits, Crawly, and what the 2 hits are. So
yeah, so we'll see what happens. But when you talk about Hotlanta, you want to talk about hot? Good Lord, this team is just absolutely, to me, they're the best team in baseball.
They are just loaded.
And the guys you got to look out for, I'm just going to put everybody, but Austin Riley's 9 for his last 20, slashing 450, 500, 700. Orlando Arcia, shortstop, he's 7 for his last 17 with 5 RBIs, slashing 412, 450, he's 921. I mean, you take a look at Ozzie Albies has been hot lately, 11 for his last 27 with a home run and 6 RBIs. Like literally when I'm looking at the average, Dustin, for the last 7 games against the starters, I'm just looking at the starters, guys that have like over 15 at bats. You got Austin Riley at third, 450 in the last 7 days. Orlando Arcia, 412. Ozzie Albies, 407. Nicky Lopez, our second baseman, 400. Ronald Acuna struggling at 333. Matt Olson, 333.
Acuna's got a guy who's got some pop, man. Boy, that guy. He is like the quietest superstar out there.
Acuna has 3 home runs in the last 7 games with 3 RBIs, so he's leading them. Olson's got 1 home run and 4 RBIs. Marcelo Zuna, he's batting 333 in the last 7 games with 1 home run and 8 RBIs. Kevin Pillar, their left fielder, you talk about hitting when you need to. He's the one that first starts making the cold list. He's at 231, but he has 5 RBIs in the last 7 days. You don't have to worry too much about Eddie Rosario. He's 2 for his last 14, slashing 143, 143, 143. And Sean Murphy, I mean, I wonder if they're regretting that trade of William Contreras. He's 2 for his last 10, slashing 100, 250, 400.
Right, that would be their one Achilles, right? That's it.
Right, and it's just, it is an absolute stacked lineup top to bottom. It is not, that's where the bullpen woes really get me nervous. Thinking about those guys. They are not going to swing at crap. They're not going to bail you out. You're going to have to earn every single out you get against this Atlanta team.
Yeah, it's not going to be easy. There's no doubt about that. All right, is it time to get some predictions, Crawly?
I don't want the fans to be mad at me, but I got the Cubs winning 1 out of 3.
Yeah, I mean, 1 out of 3 is probably realistic, and I'm just going to say 2 out of 3 just on the chance that they're meaning the Braves don't have their top 2 guys. That's a fact. And potentially it's going to be young guys. Maybe they're going to give guys a look, give guys an opportunity. The Braves don't need these games. They don't need them right now. So maybe, just maybe, they'll give a guy a day off. They'll play around with the lineup. They'll just do some things that are uncharacteristic of them. So that's what I'm hanging my hat on here. The Cubs need these games. They have to continue to approach these games like their playoff games. So I'm going to go 2 out of 3. They're not going to get swept. I know the Cubs are not going to get swept. That I know for sure. You're probably right, 1 out of 3, but I'm going to go 2 out of 3.
You're going big, and you know who else is going big? Elmo. From the Sesame Street bobblehead flying the W. Take a look at this for the people on the YouTube channel.
Oh, very cool.
Little Sesame Street Elmo right here. Absolutely love it.
Elmo says Cubs win. Elmo says fly the W. Yeah.
Fly the W. He's got his flag ready.
He's got his flag ready. All right, Crawly. That's a wrap. Don't forget to listen, download, review, and most importantly, subscribe to the Fly the W podcast. Follow us on the socials. Fly the W on Facebook. Fly the W on Instagram. Of course, we're on Twitter. You can email us, flythew670gmail.com. And you can watch us on YouTube by subscribing to the 670 The Score YouTube channel.
You know, I want to use those playoff tickets, Dustin. They're sitting in my phone. All you got to do is just take care of business, win series, and you go to the postseason. All you want to do right now is cheer for those Smokies and go Cubs. Hey guys, it's Crawly. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more content like this. If you want to see more of our videos, be sure to check out our playlist and let us know what you think in the comments below. Also, don't forget to follow us on social media to stay up to date with our latest episodes. Links are in the description. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. Go Cubs!